They said you're not welcome here until you apologize. That sentence landed soft, like a leaf falling in late autumn, but it carried the weight of a door slamming shut. No shouting, no tears, just a quiet verdict delivered on the front porch of the house I'd called home for 38 years. I stood there, Vivian Brooks, 68 years old. A retired nurse with creaky knees and a heart that still remembered every beat of this place. The air smelled of damp leaves and the faint cedar from the porch swing. Henry and I hung when Laura was just a baby. My daughter-in-law, Laura, stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her face calm but unyielding. She was 42, a sharp-edged event planner who could organize a wedding for 200 but couldn't spare a kind word for me. "You went through our things, Vivian," she said, her voice steady, rehearsed. "That's not okay." I clutched the handle of the old wooden trunk I'd brought over, filled with letters, photos, and Henry's firefighting medals from his years at the station. Things I'd kept in the basement of this house, my house, until Laura and her husband, Daniel, decided it was clutter. I'd only wanted to share them with Ethan, my 18-year-old grandson, before they forgot who Henry was. I wasn't snooping, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "These are Henry's things. Ethan might want them someday. Laura's?" Lips tightened, just a fraction. "Ethan's busy with college. Doesn't need old boxes taking up space." I turned to Daniel, standing behind her, his countenance eyes fixed on the porch floor like he was calculating the grain in the wood. 45 years old, always polite, always distant. I waited for him to say something, anything, a word. To soften the blow, a glance to show he remembered I'd paid the mortgage on this house for decades. But Daniel just shifted his weight, silent. The trunk sat between us, heavy with more than just papers. Henry's commendation from the 1987 warehouse fire. The photo of Laura's first birthday, chocolate frosting smeared on her cheeks. My old nursing badge, tucked in an envelope with a note from Henry that said, "You save lives, Viv. Don't forget that." "Steal my house," I said, more to myself than to them. Laura tilted her head, her voice almost gentle, but not quite. "It's our home now, Vivian. You gave Daniel half the title when Henry passed. For convenience, you said convenience." That word stung, sharp and cold. 9 years ago, when Henry's heart gave out in the middle of a Sunday crossword, I was drowning in grief. Daniel offered to handle the taxes, the paperwork, said it would make things easier. I trusted him. I trusted Laura. I didn't think easier would mean standing on my own porch, barred from walking inside. "You need to apologize," Laura said, her tone final, like she was checking off a task, "for going through our space. For not respecting boundaries." I looked at Daniel again. Nothing. Not a word, not a flicker. Ethan stood further back, half hidden by the doorframe, his college hoodie pulled tight around him. His eyes met mine for a second, then darted away. My grandson, the boy I'd read bedtime stories to, was letting this happen. The Seattle sky was gray, the kind of gray that settles into your bones in October. The street was quiet, the neighborhood holding its breath as if it knew something was breaking. I bent down slow, my hands trembling not from age but from something deeper. Something that had been waiting too long to shift. I lifted the trunk, heavier now than when I'd carried it over. "I'm not apologizing," I said, my voice steady for the first time. "Not for remembering the life I built here." Laura's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. "Then you're not welcome back until you do." I turned, stepped off the porch, and walked to my car, parked in the same driveway I'd backed into 1,000 times. The maple tree Henry and I planted when Laura turned 8 swayed in the breeze, its leaves a blaze of red against the dusk. I didn't look back, not at the mailbox I'd painted every spring, not at the rosebushes Henry tended until his hands grew too weak, not at the window where we used to hang Christmas lights. I didn't cry. Not when I set the trunk in the back seat. Not when I drove past the corner store where Laura used to beg for candy. Not even when I saw the porch light flicker on, like they were already moving on without me. But something inside me, something stubborn, something alive clicked into place. By the time I reached the main road, I'd made up my mind. They wouldn't need to worry about keeping me out of the house. 'Cause by that evening, it wouldn't be their house anymore. It wouldn't be mine either. It would be gone. And that's how it started, not with a fight. Not with tears, but with a sentence spoken on a porch by people who thought respect was something I owed them, not the other way around. They were wrong. I was 68, not invisible. And I was about to remind them of that. I drove back to my apartment, the trunk rattling softly in the back seat. It was a small place, just a one-bedroom on the edge of Seattle, where the city faded into quiet streets lined with evergreens. It's the kind of place you move to when life shrinks, but you're not ready to disappear. I set the trunk on my kitchen table, a wobbly oak thing I'd bought at a thrift store after Henry died. The room was too still, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to decide what came next. I didn't decide anything right away. I just sat there, hands resting on the trunk's worn edges, staring at the scratches in the wood. Each one told a story. A nick from when Laura, at 5, tried to help Henry carry it. A scuff from the day we moved into the house, back in '86, when we were young and reckless and so sure we could make a life that lasted. I opened the trunk slow, like I was afraid the memories might spill out and break. Inside was Henry's old firefighting helmet. Scratched but polished, the one he wore during his last call before retiring. A stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon that we wrote to each other when he was stationed across town and I was pulling night shifts at the hospital. A photo of Laura, 7 years old, grinning with a missing tooth, standing in the backyard, with a kite that never quite flew right. My handwriting on the back, Laura's first summer storm. She laughed until she cried. I'd kept these things, not because they were worth anything to anyone else, but because they were proof. Proof that I'd been here, that I'd loved, that I'd bandaged scraped knees and cooked dinners and stayed up late worrying about fevers and futures. Proof that this life, my life, had mattered. And now Laura and Daniel wanted me to apologize for holding on to it. I made tea more out of habit than want. The kettle whistled, sharp and familiar, and I stood by the stove, watching the steam curl into the air. I was 68, but I could still feel the weight of every year I'd carried this family. Henry and I bought that house in the spring of '86, a fixer-upper with a sagging porch and windows that rattled in the wind. It cost more than we had, but we signed the papers with trembling hands and a kind of joy that felt like jumping off a cliff. Henry carried me over the threshold, laughing, his firefighter's arms strong and sure. We didn't even have a couch. Yet, just a mattress on the floor and a box of canned soup. We'll make this place ours. Viv, he'd said, kneeling to patch a hole in the kitchen linoleum. We'll fill it with us, and we did. The living room where Laura learned to walk, toddling into Henry's arms. The kitchen where I baked her birthday cakes every year, even when she was too old to care. The backyard where Henry built a swing set, swearing under his breath when the bolts wouldn't line up. Every inch of that house held us, held me. The dent in the hallway wall from when Laura threw a toy truck. Cool. The coffee stain on the dining table from Henry's morning ritual. The creak in the stairs I knew by heart, like a song I didn't need to learn. When Henry died, it was sudden. A heart attack mid-sentence while he was reading me a headline about a new park opening downtown. One moment he was there, his voice warm and teasing, and the next he was gone, his coffee mug still warm on the table. I held his hand as the paramedics came, my own hand steady from years of nursing, but shaking inside. Grief didn't just change me, it changed the house. Walls felt thinner, the air colder, like it missed him too. Laura was 33 then, already married to Daniel, already building her own life. She helped with the paperwork, the insurance, the endless forms that come with death. She was good then, present, or maybe I just needed her to be. Daniel offered to take over the property taxes, said it would simplify things. I was too tired to argue, too raw to think it through. So we put the house in both our names. Joint ownership, tenants in common. The lawyer said it was fine, said I'd always have a place there. I believed her. I believed them. Then came Daniel. He was polite, always, but it was the kind of politeness that keeps you at arm's length. A 45-year-old accountant with a knack for numbers and a habit of rearranging things to suit himself. When he and Laura moved into the house, I thought it would be temporary, a way to save money while they started their family, but they stayed. And slowly, the house stopped being mine. It started small. Daniel painted over the mural Henry had done for Laura's nursery, a forest scene with stars he'd spent weeks perfecting. I didn't say anything. Laura replaced the old curtains in the living room, the ones I'd sewn myself, with something sleek and modern. I swallowed that too. They moved my favorite armchair to the basement, said it didn't match their vision. I nodded, smiled, told myself it was their home now. But it wasn't just furniture. It was the way Laura stopped asking my opinion, the way Daniel corrected me when I called the kitchen mine, the way they'd plan holidays without telling me, then invite me at the last minute like an afterthought. I tried to be kind, too. Stay out of their way. I brought cookies, offered to watch Ethan when he was younger, suggested family dinners. But the cookies went uneaten, the babysitting offers were declined for someone more structured. And the dinners became tense, quiet affairs where I felt like a guest in my own life. I thought kindness would be enough. I thought if I stayed patient, stayed present, they'd see me again. But kindness isn't a key. It doesn't unlock doors that someone's already bolted shut. The worst was Ethan's 16th birthday. I'd saved up for my pension, years of careful budgeting, to help buy him a used car, something safe, reliable, like the one Henry and I got Laura when she was his age. I told Laura over coffee, excited, thinking it could be a moment we shared. She smiled, tight-lipped, and said, "That's sweet, Vivian, but we're teaching Ethan to earn things." A week later, they surprised him with a shiny new SUV, paid in full. I wasn't mad they didn't need my money. I was mad they didn't want my help. Henry used to say, "People stop listening to you when they find someone who makes them feel bigger." Laura found that in Daniel. He praised her, called her brilliant, organized, the perfect mother. And she bloomed under it, like a flower turning toward the sun. I didn't mind her shining. I just didn't expect to become the shadow. I stopped, offering to help with Ethan's school projects. I stopped bringing pies to Thanksgiving after Daniel said mine was too sweet for their diet. I stopped suggesting family trips, stopped calling first. Each time I pulled back, I thought they'd notice. They didn't. They just filled the space with their own plans, their own rules, their own version of the family where I was a footnote. And then came the basement. They'd asked me to clear out my boxes, said they needed room for a home office. I went down there last week, not to snoop, but to save what was left of us. Henry's helmet, Laura's old drawings, my nursing journals. From the 80s, I thought Ethan might want to know his grandfather, the man who ran into burning buildings to save strangers. I thought Laura might remember the mother who stayed up all night when she had the flu. I was wrong. The tea had gone cold in my cup. I set it down and pulled a photo from the trunk. Laura, 10, in a yellow dress, standing on the porch swing. Henry's handwriting on the back, Laura's first recital. She was braver than me. I traced the words, my fingers steady now. They wanted an apology for what? For keeping these things, for refusing to vanish. I'd spent 38 years building that house, not just with bricks, but with love, with late nights and early mornings, with every choice I made to stay. And now they thought I'd beg to be let back in. A knock at the door broke my thoughts. It was Ruth, my neighbor of 20 years, holding a tin of blueberry muffins. "Saw your car pull in?" she said, her voice warm like always. "You look like you could use some sugar." "Ruth," I said, my throat tight, "you always know when I'm falling apart." She smiled, her eyes sharp but kind. "You're not falling apart, Viv. You're just gathering yourself. Want to talk?" "Not yet." I said, "but I will." She nodded, left the muffins, and walked back across the lawn. I closed the door and saw a voicemail blinking on my phone. "Ethan, hey, Grandma." His voice was soft, hesitant. "Mom said you were upset. Just checking in. Love you." Upset? That's what they called it. I laughed. A quiet, bitter sound. They were already rewriting the story, making me the problem. But I wasn't the one who needed to apologize. And I wasn't the one who'd lose this house. I sat at the kitchen table, the blueberry muffins Ruth left untouched beside the cold tea. The trunk was still open, Henry's firefighting helmet catching the dim light from the window. Outside, the Seattle rain had started, a soft patter against the glass, like the world was whispering, "What now, Viv?" I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to apologize. Not for holding on to the life I'd built, not for refusing to shrink into someone else's version of me. By morning, I'd made a call. Not to Laura, not to Daniel, but to Patricia. The lawyer Henry and I trusted when we bought the house in '86. She was retired now, but still took calls for old clients. Her voice sharp and steady despite her age. "Vivian," she said, "what's going on? You sound like you're ready to move mountains." "Not mountains," I said, "just a house." I told her everything, Laura's words on the porch, Daniel's silence, the trunk of memories they called clutter. Patricia listened, didn't interrupt, just let me spill it all out. When I finished, she said, "You still have the deed, don't you? Joint ownership, tenants in common." "Yes," I said. "It's in my desk." "Good, bring it to my office tomorrow. And any other paperwork, tax, records, mortgage payments, insurance, we'll sort this out." I spent that night pulling files from the drawer where I kept the important things. The deed, yellowed but clear, with Henry's signature. Next to mine, tax records from the last 9 years, every payment I'd made since he passed. A home equity loan I took out to help Laura with her wedding, the one she wanted so badly to be perfect. I laid it all out on the table next to the muffins and felt something settle in me. Not peace, not yet, but clarity. The next morning, I walked into Patricia's office, small space downtown with a view of the Puget Sound. She wore glasses now, her hair grayer than I remembered, but her handshake was firm. "Let's see what we've got," she said, spreading the documents across her desk. She read slowly, her pen tapping the paper like it was keeping time. "You've got full rights to sell your share," she said finally. "Tenants in common means Laura can't stop you. She can argue the valuation, but not the sale itself. The clause you signed after Henry's death, full usage rights until you die or sell, protects you." I nodded, my hands folded in my lap. "I don't want to fight, Patricia. I just want it done." She looked at me, her eyes soft but searching. "This is your home, Vivian. 38 years. You sure?" I thought of the porch, the way Laura's voice had cut through the October air. I thought of Daniel's silence, Ethan's averted eyes. I thought of Henry, how he'd carried me over the threshold, how he'd promised we'd fill that house with our lives. It wasn't a house anymore. It was a cage, and I was done being locked inside, I'm sure. I said Patricia gave me the name of a realtor, Linda Carter, a woman who handled complex situations with a steady hand. I called her that afternoon, and by evening, she was at my apartment, clipboard in hand, her smile professional but warm. "I can list it quietly," she said. "No open house, just targeted buyers. We'll need an appraisal first. I've got a guy, Tom, who's quick and thorough." "Do it," I said, "as fast as you can." The appraisal was set for Friday, 2 days away. I spent those days sorting through the trunk, not to pack it away, but to hold it one last time. One found a letter Henry wrote me during a week-long training in '89. "Viv, you're tougher than any fire I've ever faced. Don't let the world tell you otherwise." I folded it carefully, slipped it into my purse. Some things weren't for sale. Friday morning, Tom arrived with Linda. He was in his 50s, soft-spoken, with a habit of nodding to himself as he checked the house. He tapped walls, inspected the foundation, tested the furnace. Linda walked with me through the rooms, her voice calm as she pointed out the new siding I'd paid for last year. This place has good bones, she said. Buyers will feel the history. History, I said, almost laughing. Laura thinks it's clutter. Linda's eyes flickered, but she didn't pry. History sells, Vivian. Trust me. Worked. I stood in the kitchen, running my fingers over the counter where I'd rolled out dough for Laura's birthday cakes. The sink where Henry washed dishes, humming off key. The window where I'd watch him mow the lawn, pretending I wasn't. Smitten after 20 years. It was all still there, but it didn't belong to me anymore. Not the way it used to. That afternoon, Linda called with news. I've got a couple interested already, she said. Retired teachers moving back to Seattle from Idaho. They saw the house online, loved the photos of the backyard. They wanted tour it Monday. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Set it up. Then came the twist. The kind of thing you don't see coming until it's staring you in the face. Patricia called me that evening, her voice tight. Vivian, I've found something in the property records. Laura and Daniel contacted a real estate firm 3 months ago. They were planning to sell the house themselves. I froze, the phone heavy in my hand. What? They didn't tell you, she said. They got an appraisal, started talks. With a buyer. They were going to split the profits, claim it as their primary residence. I only found out because the firm filed a preliminary notice with the county, and my paralegal caught it. The room spun just for a second. Laura and Daniel hadn't just barred me from the house. They'd been planning to sell it out from under me, to erase me without a word. I thought of Laura's calm voice on the porch, Daniel's silence, the way they'd framed me as the problem. It wasn't about the trunk. It was about control, about rewriting the story, so I didn't exist in it. Did they know I'd find out? I asked. Patricia sighed. Probably thought you wouldn't. Check. Most people don't. I laughed, sharp and hollow. They thought wrong. Patricia paused. You can still sell, Vivian. You've got the upper hand legally. It can't stop you, and they don't know you're moving forward. What do you want to do? I looked at the trunk, at Henry's helmet glinting in the lamplight. I thought of Ethan, his quiet love you on the voicemail. The only piece of my family that still felt like mine. I want to sell, I said, and I want to make sure Ethan's taken care of. Patricia didn't hesitate. Draft. A trust for Ethan. You can fund it with the sale proceeds. Long-term protected, no strings. He won't need anyone's permission to use it. Do it, I said. Monday came, and the retired teachers toured the house. Linda called that evening, her voice bright but careful. They love it, she said. Full price, cash offer, no contingencies. They lost their daughter years ago, and they're looking for a place with heart, not just walls. They can close by the end of the month. I sat at my table, staring at the deed, the appraisal report, the trust documents Patricia had sent over. The rain had stopped, and the Seattle sky was clear for once, stars faint but visible through the window. I signed the papers, my hand steady, the pen scratching like it was carving my name back into the world. I didn't cry, not when I slid the documents into the envelope. Not when I thought of Laura and Daniel's secret plan, their betrayal laid bare in county records. Not even when I pictured Ethan, who might never know how much I loved him. But something in me lifted, like a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it was there. Laura sent a text that night. Ethan wants to visit this weekend. Please don't make it awkward. No apology, no questions, just a demand to play nice. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Patricia. Make the trust ironclad, I said. Ethan gets it all, no matter what they say. She didn't ask why. She just said, it's done. The house was slipping away, not because I'd lost it, but because I'd chosen to let it go. Laura and Daniel thought they could erase me, thought they could sell my life out from under me. They didn't know I'd beaten them to it. And they didn't know I was doing it for Milan, for Ethan. The one person who still saw me, even if he didn't know how to say it yet. The house sold on a Wednesday. Linda's text came just after noon, short and to the point. Funds received. Deal closed. New owners move in Monday. I sat on the edge of my bed in the new plaza, small rental cottage on the edge of Olympia, Washington, where the air smelled of pine and lake water. The words didn't hit me like I thought they would. No ache, no regret, just a quiet exhale, like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally remembered how to let it go. The cottage was simple. One bedroom, a porch, barely big enough for a chair, and a garden tangled with rosemary and wildflowers. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. No one had died here. No one had argued over dinner or barred a mother from her own kitchen. The walls were bare, the floors creaked under my steps, and the silence felt honest, like it was giving me room to exist. I unpacked slowly, not because I had much, but because I wanted to feel every choice. To suitcases, a handbag, and a journal I'd started keeping. I left behind the things that carried Laura and Daniel's weight. The floral vase Laura gave me that I never liked. The cookbook Daniel bought from a chain store, still in its plastic wrap. I kept what was mine, Henry's firefighting helmet. A photo of us dancing at Laura's wedding, his eyes still bright with mischief. A nursing pin from my first year at the hospital, when I was young and scared but showed up anyway. That first night, I sat on the porch with a mug of chamomile tea, the lake reflecting a sliver of moonlight. Oh, the rosemary swayed in the breeze, and I let myself be still. Not sad, not angry, just present. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. A text from Ethan. Dad saw the listing. He's freaking out, wants to talk. What do I say? I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the screen. I could picture Daniel's face, read with indignation. Laura's voice sharp with accusations. Let them feel it, I thought. Let them sit with the consequences of their choices. I typed back. Tell him I'm okay. That's enough for now. Set the phone down and let the night carry on. Ethan came by that Saturday, a paper bag of bagels in one hand, a bottle of orange juice in the other. For your fridge, he said, stepping inside. It's kind of empty. I smiled. It is. Purpose. He looked around the cottage, his eyes lingering on the bare shelves, the single chair by the window. It's quiet here, he said. Smells like books and, what, herbs? Rosemary, I said. It's from the garden. We sat at this small table, the lake glittering outside. Ethan talked about college, his biology classes, a girl he liked but was too shy to ask out. I let him lead, sensing he needed the normalcy more than I did. But after a while, he set his bagel down and looked at me, his voice low. They're mad, Grandma. Really mad? Who? I asked, though I knew. Mom and Dad, they say you blindsided them, that selling the house was dramatic. I sipped my tea, letting the warmth settle in my chest. They're entitled to their feelings, Ethan, but they don't get to decide. Mine. He frowned, his young face caught between loyalty and confusion. Dad says you're punishing them, that you're trying to hurt them. I leaned back, looking at him carefully. Sweetheart, if I wanted to punish them, I'd have left them with the taxes and the repairs. I sold the house to stop punishing myself. His eyes widened, just a fraction, and he nodded, like he was piecing something together. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out an envelope. This came to the house, he said. Mom didn't want to bring it, so I did. I opened it slowly. A bank notice, confirming the sale, the funds transferred, the trust for Ethan. Finalized. Tucked inside was a post-it note, handwritten in a stranger's script, wishing you peace in your next chapter. I folded it back up, set it aside. Will you tell them about the trust? Ethan asked, his voice soft. Not unless they ask, I said. And if they do, I'll tell them what's theirs. Nothing more. He nodded again, then stood picking a sprig of rosemary from the garden before he left. For your kitchen, he said, tying it with a string from his bag. I placed it in a glass by the window, next to Henry's helmet, and felt something loosen in me like a knot finally undone. Laura's messages came that evening, sharp and polished, like she'd written them for a client. Vivian, we understand you're upset, but this affects everyone. You could have included us. You've caused confusion for Ethan and destabilized our family. I read it once, then set the phone down. Destabilized. Funny word for a family that hadn't invited me to Thanksgiving in 3 years. Daniel called next, his voicemail clipped. Vivian, this isn't you. Selling the house without a word. That was our home. Call me back. I didn't. Their anger wasn't my responsibility anymore. A week later, Ethan called again, his voice quieter this time. They know about the trust. He said Dad saw the bank alerts, figured it out. There. Not happy. I closed my eyes, picturing Laura's tight smile, Daniel's calculations. Are they treating you differently? I asked. Yeah, he said. Mom's cold. Dad keeps talking about loyalty, like I did something wrong. You don't owe them a defense, I said. You're not their messenger. I know, he whispered, but it's hard. I love them, Grandma. I know, sweetheart. There was a long pause. Then, softer, did you do it for me? A trust. I smiled into the phone. I did it for me, Ethan, because I needed to remember who I am. And I included you because you've never made me feel small. He didn't say much after that, just a quiet thanks. But it was enough. That night, I sat at the cottage table with a journal, not fancy. It's just a spiral-bound thing from the drugstore. I wrote a letter I'd never send, not to Laura or Daniel, but to Ethan. Dear Ethan, you'll sit in rooms someday where no one hears you, where your stories are dismissed, your presence taken for granted. When that day comes, no, you don't have to stay. You can walk away, build your own space, live where your voice matters. The trust is yours, not to buy things, but to buy freedom. To remind you that you're enough, just as you are. I'm proud of you, not for being kind, but for being awake. For seeing me when no one else did. With love, Grandma. I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer. Some words are meant to be written, not sent, just to lighten the load you've carried too long. The lake was calm that evening, the air cool and sharp with rosemary. I stood on the porch, my hands empty, my heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. I wasn't the house. I wasn't the memories Laura and Daniel tried to erase. I was Vivian Brooks, a woman who'd loved fiercely, worked tirelessly, and walked away when it was time. And to anyone listening, anyone who's ever felt small in a place they called home, I want to say this. You are not defined by the doors you're locked out of. You are defined by the ones you open for yourself. When the world tells you to apologize for existing, for remembering, for being too much, don't walk away. Find a place where the air doesn't demand your silence. Share this story if it stirred something in you. Let the quiet end. Let it start with you.